Cerelia floated silently above the brown and green patchwork of Earth. From space, the planet looked serene, almost fragile. Her eyes, pale like the ice moons of her home, took in the swirling clouds, the deep blue oceans, and the scattered patches of desert that looked like gold dust scattered across a green canvas. She had spent her life among the stars, moving from one cold, orderly world to another, her heart carefully folded away after the loss of her partner. But now, curiosity and something she did not fully understand had brought her here, to a planet where life seemed messy, loud, and unpredictable. Her ship was small, almost delicate, a slender craft designed for exploration. It hummed quietly as it descended into the atmosphere, its shields glowing faintly against the friction of the air. Cerelia had read about this planet, observed it from afar, and yet nothing could prepare her for the smell, the heat, the way the wind could sting her skin as if it were alive. She adjusted her cloak, a shimmering layer that protected her from the foreign air, and guided the ship toward a remote region. It was mostly desert, with sparse vegetation and rocky ridges, a place where humans were said to live simply, surviving against the harsh land. The land was silent in a way that she had not expected. No hum of machines, no structured order. Just wind, rocks, and the distant cries of birds she did not recognize. She landed gently in a valley that opened to a wide plain. The craft touched down softly, and Cerelia stepped out. Her boots sank slightly into the dry earth, and the warmth of the sun on her skin felt almost aggressive, almost alive. She inhaled deeply. This was a world full of chaos, full of life, and that was both terrifying and exciting. She had planned this trip for months. Her species believed in restraint, in observing before acting. But she had grown tired of watching from afar. She wanted to see humans as they lived, to understand what drove them, what made them laugh, what made them brave or foolish. Loneliness had been her companion for years, a constant reminder of loss, and yet here she was, far from home, ready to see life in its rawest form. It did not take long for her to notice the signs of human habitation. Dusty paths cut through the rocks, and in the distance she saw a small wooden structure, its roof patched and its walls weathered by sun and wind. Smoke curled from a chimney, a signal of warmth and life. She approached cautiously, knowing that humans were unpredictable. In her experience, first impressions could determine everything. She wanted to observe, to interact carefully without frightening them or herself. The door of the cabin opened before she could even knock. A man stepped out, tall and broad, his skin tanned by the relentless sun, his hair dark and unruly. His eyes were sharp, assessing, and his hands rested on the hips of someone used to work and responsibility. He wore simple clothes, worn boots, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face. There was an air of confidence about him, the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of facing danger and hardship. He was human, all human, and yet there was something in his gaze that suggested he was curious, too. "Can I help you?" His voice was rough but not unkind. There was a caution there, a hint that he did not welcome strangers easily. Cerelia paused, considering her words. Her language module translated her thoughts into clear, simple words. "I am exploring," she said softly. "I come from far away." Her accent was foreign, a musical quality that drew his attention immediately. The man studied her, one eyebrow raised. "Far away, huh? You're a long way from anywhere most folks would come from. Name S. Jace." He held out his hand, as if expecting a handshake. Cerelia hesitated, then placed her delicate fingers into his rough palm. It was a small gesture, but in that moment an unspoken understanding passed between them, curiosity, caution, and the fragile thread of trust. Jace nodded, satisfied enough, and stepped aside. "Well, you're welcome to rest inside. But I warn you, it's not much." Everything here told a story, a life carved out of struggle, a life that had to be earned. Jace watched her, intrigued. She moved with a grace that seemed unnatural, deliberate, and yet there was no arrogance in her gestures. She was careful, deliberate, as if she were learning by absorbing every detail. Humans were unpredictable, he knew, but there was a bravery in her. Something that told him she did not fear the unknown. "You're not like anyone I've ever met," he said, breaking the silence. Cerelia turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. "Nor I anyone on my home world. Humans are fascinating. Everything is alive, even the air seems to have its own will. You're strange, but in a good way. Makes me wonder why someone like you would come all this way to a place like this. Takes guts just to survive a week in the heat without going crazy." That was something she could not ignore. As the sun began to sink behind the mountains, a sudden wind whipped through the valley. Dust swirled violently, and the cabin shuddered as if protesting against the storm. Cerelia moved to the window, observing the sky darkening rapidly. Jace grabbed a lantern and moved to secure the door. "This storm came out of nowhere," he muttered. "Guess you're stuck here for a while," he glanced at her. "Hope you don't mind getting a little dirty." They sat by the table, watching the chaos outside, the storm becoming a kind of test. Both of them were silent for a long moment, each observing the other. There was a strange rhythm to their presence, she calm and calculating, he grounded and instinctive. They were opposites, yet complementary in ways neither could articulate. "You're not afraid?" Jace asked, finally breaking the silence. Cerelia shook her head. "Fear is unfamiliar to me in this context. Danger can be analyzed, survival can be measured, yet this unpredictability is something entirely new." The storm raged outside, yet inside, a different kind of storm began, a quiet exchange of thoughts, questions, and cautious laughter. Cerelia asked about life here, about cattle, the land, and the human way of facing adversity. Jace told stories, not of heroism, but of the little victories, the daily struggles, the moments of courage that mattered in a human life. She listened, fascinated. These stories were illogical, yet powerful. Humans survived because they could adapt, improvise, and take risks. They thrived on unpredictability. By the time the storm subsided, night had fallen. The stars above were brilliant, more brilliant than she had ever seen from her home planet. She stepped outside, feeling the cooling air on her skin. Jace followed, lighting a small fire to keep warm. They sat in silence, watching the flames flicker against the dark desert, two beings from entirely different worlds connected by circumstance, curiosity, and perhaps something deeper neither yet understood. For the first time in decades, Cerelia felt a flicker of something she had thought lost forever: anticipation. Life here was dangerous, messy, and unpredictable. And yet in that unpredictability there was beauty. In the courage of a human, she saw something powerful. In the warmth of a shared fire, she felt a connection she had long denied herself. Perhaps this trip, this strange journey to a small, dusty corner of Earth, would teach her more than observation ever could. Perhaps it would teach her about courage, about life, and about the possibilities of connection in ways she had never imagined. As they watched the stars, the silence stretched comfortably between them. Neither spoke, but both understood that this night, this meeting, was only the beginning. The human world was chaotic, yet in that chaos there was hope, adventure, and perhaps even a kind of magic that logic could never explain. And Cerelia, the lonely alien widow, felt something shift inside her, something fragile yet insistent, something that told her that the universe still had surprises left, even for those who thought they had seen everything. The fire crackled, the desert stretched endlessly beyond them, and for the first time in years, Cerelia felt alive. The sun rose slowly over the desert, casting a warm, golden light across the rugged landscape. Cerelia watched the horizon, her pale eyes reflecting both the brightness and the subtle beauty of the human world. She had spent countless cycles in the cold, precise worlds of her people, where everything was measured, predicted, and controlled. But here, the sunrise was chaotic and breathtaking, unpredictable in the way it spilled over the jagged rocks and sand. It was unsettling and wonderful at the same time. Jace emerged from the cabin, stretching his arms over his head and letting out a long, satisfied sigh. He had already begun tending to his small herd of goats grazing nearby. His movements were easy, practiced, confident. Cerelia had noticed the way humans interacted with the land, how they respected it without fully understanding it, and she found it fascinating. While her people had mastery over technology and order, humans seemed to command respect through intuition, courage, and sheer perseverance. "You awake early," Jace said, noticing her at the edge of the cabin. "I wish to observe," she replied softly, "to see how life persists even when conditions are harsh. You'll see that humans don't just survive, they fight for every moment. It's not always pretty, but it works. I am not like your people, I know, but I am learning. Humans are unpredictable, and yet they thrive. You notice the little things." Her hands, delicate and almost ethereal, were surprisingly efficient, and Jace began to notice that her presence made tasks easier, smoother, as though she could sense the best way to act before he even suggested it. By midday, the sun was high, scorching the earth, and they rested under the shade of a lone mesquite tree. Cerelia sat cross-legged, observing the humans passing by, listening to their language, absorbing the nuances she had never encountered before. "You don't eat much," Jace observed. "You need to. Sun out here will get you if you're not careful. That's the human way. You might just fit in better than you think." And yet he thrived in a world she had only seen from above, judged impossible for survival. That, she thought, was something worth understanding. As the day wore on, they walked toward a nearby water source. Jace carried a simple leather bucket, and Cerelia followed silently, her every movement precise. They approached a small stream running through the valley. Jace knelt and dipped the bucket into the cool water. "Fresh and clean, something humans have to find and fight for every day," he said, handing her a sip. Cerelia tasted the water. It was simple, ordinary, yet refreshing in a way that surprised her. "Your world has life even in small things," she said. "I have seen planets with oceans, skies, and yet no life survives. Here, everything persists, even when conditions are harsh. Humans relied on courage, on intuition, on improvisation. That improvisation, messy, unpredictable, dangerous, was somehow more alive than the perfect order she had known. By evening, the sky darkened with clouds that had gathered unexpectedly. Cerelia's sensors detected the faint hum of energy she had never seen in humans. Lightning cracked in the distance, and Jace's instincts took over. "We'll need to get back to the cabin before the storm hits," he said, scanning the horizon. The wind picked up suddenly, pushing sand into their faces. Cerelia adapted immediately, her alien reflexes allowing her to navigate the terrain with ease, but she noticed how Jace moved with a natural rhythm, predicting obstacles without thought, acting instinctively. He was chaotic yet precise in his own way. They reached the cabin just as the storm broke in full force. Rain and wind battered the thin walls, and the cabin shook as the elements tore at the desert. Cerelia helped reinforce the door with her strength, while Jace gathered firewood and secured supplies. "Impressive," Jace said, watching her work. "You handle chaos well." Cerelia observed him closely, noticing the lines on his face, the way his eyes softened when he spoke of the land he loved, the way his hands moved naturally, guided by years of experience. "You humans are remarkable," she said quietly. "Not because you have technology or knowledge, but because you survive, because you act when others might hesitate. You are brave in ways my people are not." Watching him face life with instinct, with fear, and with joy, she felt a stirring in herself she had not experienced since her partner had passed. The storm outside became a mirror of the storm inside her mind. She had come to Earth seeking observation, yet she found herself drawn to this human, to the chaos and life he represented. And she could not deny the strange curiosity building inside her, an emotion her culture had taught her to suppress. Suddenly, the cabin shook violently. The wind forced its way through cracks in the walls, and the fire flickered dangerously. Cerelia's instincts kicked in, and she used her strength to stabilize the cabin. Jace was impressed, his usual confidence tinged with awe. "You're full of surprises," he said, shaking his head. She looked at him, pale eyes reflecting the firelight. "And you are not as simple as you appear. I expected primitive, yet I find resourcefulness, courage, and intelligence. Humans are unpredictable and strong. Glad I can meet expectations, or not meet them, as the case may be." She realized humans were not only adaptable, they were driven by emotion, by instinct, by courage. And she could not help but be fascinated. When sleep finally claimed them, it was in a room that had once been silent and simple, now alive with energy. Two beings from different worlds rested in the same space, connected by curiosity, trust, and the strange beginnings of something more. In the middle of the night, Cerelia woke, sensing a subtle change in herself. A gentle warmth, a pulse of energy she did not fully understand, coursed through her body. It was as if her very being recognized the presence of Jace, his human life force affecting her in ways her science could not explain. She studied him quietly, watching the rise and fall of his chest, the steady rhythm of life that seemed so ordinary yet so extraordinary. The moment passed, leaving her with a quiet sense of anticipation. This world was dangerous, unpredictable, and alive. And perhaps, just perhaps, it had something to teach her about life, about connection, and about possibilities she had never allowed herself to imagine. As dawn broke once again, casting long shadows across the desert, Cerelia rose and prepared for the day. She would continue to observe, to learn, to adapt. But she knew one thing clearly. The human before her, this rugged, strange, resourceful creature named Jace, had already begun to change her. And she had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in many cycles, she was eager to find out. The days in the desert passed quickly, yet each one felt like an eternity of discovery for Cerelia. She had grown accustomed to Jace's routines, to the rhythm of his world, and yet every moment carried new lessons. She watched humans not just survive, but thrive, adapting to challenges that her logical mind had never imagined. Their strength was not in perfection or technology, but in their creativity, their courage, and their stubborn refusal to yield to circumstances beyond their control. One morning, as the sun rose in a pale gold haze over the rocky cliffs, Cerelia noticed movement at the edge of the valley. A small hovercraft, far less advanced than her ship, but still far beyond what humans could build, approached from the distance. Its metallic surface gleamed in the sunlight, and sensors she had never seen activated as soon as it detected her presence. "They found me," she whispered, a note of fear threading her voice. Her species had taught her that exposure could lead to imprisonment, study, or worse. She had come to Earth seeking understanding, not conflict. Jace, ever perceptive, noticed the subtle shift in her posture. "Found you?" he asked cautiously, squinting at the approaching machine. "Who's looking for you?" "Humans, a scientist from your species. He studies alien activity. He wants to capture me for research." "Well, they're not going to get you while I'm here." The hovercraft landed roughly, kicking up dust and small stones. A man stepped out, his white coat flapping in the wind, gadgets strapped to his chest, and a look of cold calculation in his eyes. His presence radiated danger, and Cerelia felt the tension in the air like static electricity. "This is unacceptable," the scientist said sharply, scanning the terrain. "You cannot hide from me forever, alien. I will study you. I will learn what your biology can offer. I do not fight with brute force. I have technology far beyond your understanding." Perhaps here on this wild, unpredictable world she did not need technology. Perhaps human ingenuity could match force with cunning. Jace's eyes scanned the desert, calculating options. "You're too reliant on your machines," he said casually. "Out here the land fights back. You don't control it, you survive it. Let's see how well your tech handles sandstorms and rough ground." Cerelia felt exhilaration coursing through her, something she had long denied herself, adrenaline raw and unfiltered. They reached a narrow canyon that twisted like a serpent through the valley. Jace paused, placing a hand on the wall, listening. Cerelia noticed how attuned he was to the environment, sensing patterns in the rock, the wind, the faintest echoes. Humans were fragile in some ways, yet here in their element they became predators in their own right. "Follow me," he whispered. "I know a place they won't find easily." They ducked into a hidden crevice in the canyon, and Cerelia marveled at the simplicity of human ingenuity, rocks arranged to block sightlines, natural tunnels used for cover. It was elegant in its own rough way. Hours passed as they hid, the wind howling above them. Cerelia and Jace spoke quietly, learning more about each other under the tension of danger. She shared fragments of her past, of loss and loneliness, while he spoke of hardship, survival, and the strange joys of life on Earth. Despite the threat outside, there was a growing bond between them, a recognition of courage and intelligence in each other. "You humans really are remarkable," Cerelia said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "Not because of tools or machines, but because you face danger with heart. You improvise, you act." Her alien reflexes made her capable of extreme movements, but it was Jace's intuition that saved them both. She realized then that humans were dangerous in their own way, not just because of their strength, but because they adapted, responded, and used instinct to overcome odds that logic alone could not solve. As night fell, they returned cautiously to the cabin, making sure the scientist's hovercraft had retreated. Cerelia observed how Jace interacted with the land, how he understood the rhythms of danger and opportunity. Her people had knowledge, but humans had heart. And heart, she discovered, could alter the course of events in ways her logic had never predicted. Inside the cabin, they sat by the fire, the tension of the day slowly fading. Cerelia felt something strange, a flutter, subtle and warm, deep inside her. She had felt loss and loneliness for so long that any sensation of connection was startling. She studied Jace as he tended the flames, realizing that this human, with all his flaws and strengths, had become central to her experience of this world. "You saved me," she said finally, her voice calm but filled with meaning. "Not with technology, not with tools, but with courage and intuition. You'd do the same if I were in trouble, I think." Jace took her on rides across the rocky desert, showing her how to handle the animals, navigate the cliffs, and anticipate storms. Cerelia learned quickly, not just from observation but from participation. She marveled at the physical skill of humans, their resilience, and their uncanny ability to improvise in dangerous situations. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the valley, Saralia felt the strange flutter again. It was faint but persistent. She realized that it coincided with moments near Jace, a subtle resonance in her body she did not understand. Her species had never documented this kind of response, an emotional and physiological connection bridging entirely different beings. She studied him quietly, noticing how he laughed at small things, how he moved instinctively, how his heart seemed full of life despite the harshness of the world. There was a raw energy in humans, something her logical mind could not measure or predict, and she was drawn to it. Jace noticed her gaze and smiled softly. "Thinking about something?" he asked. Saralia hesitated. "I am observing. Your species is fascinating. You are brave, resourceful, and yet your strength comes from your flaws as well as your abilities. You survive not because you are perfect, but because you are willing to act. But mostly heart." That night, as they slept near the fire, Saralia's sensors picked up the faint hum of life around her. Hers, Jace, and the subtle shift within herself. It was a quiet promise of change, a hint that her journey on Earth was about to become more than observation. It was the beginning of connection, danger, and a future she had never dared to imagine. The alien widow had come seeking understanding, and she found it in courage, in unpredictability, and in the heart of a rugged human who lived boldly in a world that demanded it. For the first time in cycles, Saralia felt alive in a way that her distant, ordered worlds had never allowed. And she knew that her story on Earth was just beginning. The desert had begun to cool as the sun sank low over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. Saralia moved carefully across the rocky terrain, her senses heightened by the subtle changes in her body. She had never experienced anything like it, warmth and motion that pulsed within her, a sensation that was both unfamiliar and insistent. At first, she had dismissed it, attributing it to fatigue, to the stress of the storm and the scientist's pursuit. But over the past days, the feeling had grown stronger, more persistent. Her biology, so precise and logical, was responding to something she could not fully understand. Jace noticed her pause as they gathered water from a small spring near the canyon. "You okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. I feel a change," Saralia said carefully. "Something within me. It is subtle but undeniable." "Change? You mean something is happening because of us? I must monitor it carefully." As they reached the cabin, Jace paused, looking at her with concern. "You've been through a lot," he said gently, "and now this. We'll figure it out. Whatever it is, we'll deal with it together." Their courage was not just in facing danger, but in supporting one another, in building trust through shared experience. She nodded, acknowledging his words. The next days were a careful balance of observation, adaptation, and growing awareness. Saralia monitored the changes in her body, noting the subtle fluctuations in energy and metabolism. She experimented with diet, temperature, and rest, recording data meticulously. Yet she could not deny the sense of comfort she felt in Jace's presence, a connection that seemed to accelerate the changes within her. Jace, meanwhile, became both protector and teacher. He taught her to read the signs of the desert, to anticipate storms, and to navigate the rocky terrain. He shared stories of survival, of humans overcoming impossible odds through courage, creativity, and determination. Saralia listened, fascinated, recognizing in him the qualities that made humans unique. They were fragile and strong at the same time, capable of error and brilliance, and yet somehow capable of thriving in environments far harsher than her own calculated worlds. One evening, as the sky turned deep indigo and stars began to shimmer above, Saralia sensed a sudden disturbance, a faint hum of energy approaching from the canyon. Her sensors, finely tuned to subtle vibrations, detected the presence of the rogue scientist once more. He had returned, more determined than before. His hovercraft kicked up dust as he navigated the terrain, his gadgets scanning for signs of life. "They're back," Saralia whispered, her voice calm but alert. "We must prepare." "I am learning that now." The storm of preparation mirrored the storm outside, chaotic, urgent, but controlled through their combined effort. As night fell, the scientist approached with caution. His sensors scanned the area, but the clever placement of natural barriers and Jace's traps made detection difficult. Saralia watched silently, noting his patterns, predicting his moves. Despite the threat, she felt a strange exhilaration, the thrill of danger, the clarity of focus, and the realization that she was part of a team, not an observer. The scientist's hovercraft slowed as he detected an anomaly. But by then, Jace and Cerelia had relocated. Using natural tunnels and hidden paths, they remained out of sight, observing his frustration from a safe distance. It was a delicate balance of strategy and improvisation, and Cerelia marveled at how instinct, creativity, and courage allowed humans to match forces far beyond their technological level. Hours passed, and the scientist finally retreated, temporarily defeated. Cerelia exhaled, her body tense with relief and lingering adrenaline. "Your species' bravery, it is remarkable," she said softly. Jace grinned, leaning back against a rock. "Bravery, yes, stubbornness, definitely, but sometimes stubbornness is what saves lives." Her species had not documented such an occurrence, and yet here it was, a testament to the unpredictable strength of humans and the strange bond she now shared with Jace. Over the next days, the changes became more apparent. Cerelia felt stronger, more aware of her surroundings, and yet more fragile in a way she had never experienced. Jace noticed the subtle shifts, how she moved with caution, how she sometimes paused to catch her breath, how her focus shifted. He did not ask, respecting her privacy, but he was attentive, protective, and quietly proud of the resilience she displayed. One morning, as they worked to repair a fence damaged by a recent storm, Cerelia stumbled slightly. Jace was immediately at her side, steadying her. "Careful," he said, his voice gentle. "You're pushing yourself too hard. Whatever it is, we'll manage." And she felt that brilliance now, intertwined with her own existence. The bond between them deepened as the days passed. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. Jace taught her the small joys of human life, the taste of fresh bread, the feel of a horse beneath her, the simple satisfaction of a job done well. Cerelia, in turn, shared knowledge of the stars, of distant worlds, of the logic and precision of her people. Each learned from the other, bridging gaps that no one could have imagined. Then, one evening, as they watched the sunset together from the edge of the canyon, Cerelia felt a sudden, sharp clarity. She looked at Jace, his silhouette framed by the dying light, and realized the truth of her situation. The new life inside her was not an accident. It was the result of their bond, their connection, and the inexplicable strength of human resilience and warmth. She felt awe, fear, and wonder all at once. Life, messy, unpredictable, and beautiful, had taken root within her. And she knew that this child, impossible by all known standards, would be a bridge between worlds, a testament to the courage and unpredictability of humans. Jace noticed her gaze and followed it, sensing her quiet intensity. "You're thinking," he said softly. "I am realizing," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "This life, it is unexpected, impossible, and yet it exists. It is proof that strength, courage, and connection can transcend worlds." She realized that life on Earth, in all its chaos and imperfection, was teaching her lessons no data or analysis ever could. Night fell, and the stars emerged, scattered across the sky like diamonds. Cerelia touched her abdomen gently, feeling the faint pulse of new life. She smiled, a quiet, profound smile that carried hope, fear, and determination. This child would be extraordinary, a product of two worlds, two species, and the courage that bound them. She turned to Jace, who watched the stars with calm confidence. "We will face the future together," she said. "Always," he replied. And in that moment, under the vast, unending sky, the alien widow and the rugged human cowboy embraced the unknown, ready to face danger, discovery, and the remarkable miracle growing within her. Earth had challenged her, tested her, and changed her, and she would never be the same. The desert morning was quiet, almost serene. The storm from the previous nights had passed, leaving the air crisp and clean, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and sun-warmed rocks. Cerelia stood at the edge of the canyon, her pale eyes scanning the horizon. The subtle pulse of life within her had grown stronger, persistent, undeniable. She placed a hand on her abdomen, feeling the rhythm of something extraordinary. Jace approached silently, holding 2 mugs of water. He handed one to her, his eyes soft with concern and pride. "You okay?" he asked. "I am," Cerelia replied, though her voice carried both awe and apprehension. "But today may be different, I feel it." Together. He had returned once, testing the desert's limits, and Cerelia knew he would come again, more determined than ever. As the day progressed, Cerelia felt the first real wave of discomfort. The changes within her were no longer subtle. Her body reacted in ways she could not control, and she realized that the child growing inside her was more resilient and adaptive than anything her species had ever encountered. She shared her concern with Jace. "I need to stay near the cabin," she said. The risk of danger is too great if I am away. The child, it must be protected. Then that's what we'll do. I'll keep watch, repair the cabin, and make sure no one comes near. We've beaten them before, and we'll do it again. He worked silently, skillfully, blending the natural landscape with clever traps he had learned over years of surviving in this harsh environment. By late afternoon, the distant hum of the rogue scientist's hovercraft reached her sensors. He was back, scanning with precision, intent on capturing Cerelia and discovering the secret within her. Cerelia felt a surge of anxiety but tempered it with focus. She had survived storms, desert nights, and her own fears, and now she had Jace beside her, a human who combined courage, ingenuity, and unpredictability in a way that even her advanced sensors could not fully analyze. The hovercraft landed roughly, kicking up dust and debris. The scientist stepped out, eyes cold and calculating. "You cannot hide forever," he called. "I will obtain the data. I will not fail." Jace used the terrain to his advantage, leading the scientist into narrow passes and rocky paths that limited the hovercraft's maneuverability. Cerelia remained inside the cabin, her mind calculating probabilities and outcomes. But as she watched Jace in motion, she realized that human ingenuity could rival the most precise calculations of her species. He was unpredictable, daring, and relentless. The scientist attempted to use energy disruptors, trying to detect Cerelia's exact position, but Jace's traps, rocks balanced precariously, dust clouds, and hidden pits, confused the sensors. Every step the scientist took was anticipated, countered, or deflected. Cerelia felt a surge of admiration. Humans were dangerous, not just because of courage, but because of creativity, adaptability, and determination. Hours passed, and the confrontation escalated. Jace moved with precision born of experience, guiding the scientist into a canyon where the hovercraft became trapped in loose rocks. Cerelia emerged quietly from the cabin, observing the scene. Her alien physiology gave her strength and speed, but she chose patience, watching how human intuition and resourcefulness overcame advanced technology. The rogue scientist struggled, frustrated by the unpredictability of the terrain and Jace's clever tactics. Finally, cornered and exhausted, he realized that brute force and technology could not overcome instinct, courage, and ingenuity combined. With a final glare, he retreated, promising return, but for now the threat had passed. Cerelia exhaled, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhilaration. "Your species, it is remarkable," she said softly, approaching Jace. "Not because of machines or knowledge, but because of courage and intuition. You act when others might hesitate. You survive when logic alone would fail." She placed a hand on her abdomen, feeling the tiny pulses of life that defied expectation. Jace knelt beside her, holding her hand firmly, his presence steady and reassuring. "We're ready," he said softly. "Whatever comes, we'll face it." Cerelia marveled at the life she held, tiny yet powerful, proof of connection and courage transcending worlds. Jace gently cradled the newborn, eyes wide with awe and wonder. "It's incredible," he whispered. "Alive, healthy, perfect." A testament to bravery, connection, and adaptability. In the days that followed, they strengthened their home, adapting to the rhythms of the desert, watching for any return of the rogue scientist. Humans and alien alike combined strength, intelligence, and heart to protect their new life. Cerelia marveled at how the human capacity for courage, ingenuity, and care could create a future that no amount of technology alone could secure. Jace watched Cerelia with pride and wonder. "You've changed me," he said one evening, holding her hand as the stars emerged above the canyon. "You've shown me what's possible. I have learned more from humans than from the entire universe." Cerelia realized that she had come seeking knowledge and found life, connection, and hope instead. The rogue scientist's threat would not disappear completely, but Cerelia and Jace now understood something essential. The strength of humans was not in control, technology, or power. It was in their courage, adaptability, and unbreakable will to survive. That strength, combined with the bond they had forged, was more than enough to protect the new life they had created. Night fell, and the stars shone brighter than ever. Cerelia and Jace sat side by side, watching the vast desert, their hands entwined. Their child slept safely between them, a living testament to the courage, heart, and resilience of humans. Cerelia had come to Earth lonely, grieving, and curious. Now she was alive, connected, and hopeful. "This world, it has taught me much," she said quietly. "It's a wild place," Jace replied, "but full of life and full of surprises." This child will carry that forward. They had survived, protected, and thrived where logic alone would fail. And in that understanding, Saralia found something deeper than observation: belonging. She belonged to this strange, wild, unpredictable world, and to the human who had become her partner in courage, heart, and life. Together they would face whatever challenges came next, united by love, bravery, and the remarkable life they had created. The desert stretched endlessly before them, but for the first time, Saralia did not feel alone. She had life, connection, and hope. The stars above shone with promise, reflecting the strength and resilience of humanity, a strength that no technology, no alien calculation, and no threat could ever diminish. They had survived storms, danger, and uncertainty. They had created life where none was expected. And as the night deepened, Saralia, Jace, and their child slept peacefully, ready to face the future together, a family forged from courage, heart, and the boundless, unpredictable spirit of humans.